Imagine stepping into the opulent ballrooms of 18th century Europe, where beneath every magnificent powdered creation lies a secret. So disturbing it would change how you view fashion forever. These towering white masterpieces weren't just style statements. They were harsh shields against society's most feared judgment. What if I told you that one of history's most elegant fashion trends was born from desperation, disease, and the desperate need to hide what polite society could never know? Today, we're peeling back the layers of powder and propriety to reveal the shocking truth behind Europe's most elaborate deception. The year was 1495, and Europe was gripped by terror. A mysterious plague had arrived from distant shores, striking without warning and leaving devastation in its wake. This wasn't the bubonic plague that had haunted medieval Europe. This was something that attacked not just the body, but the very foundation of social standing itself. Syphilis had arrived in Europe, and with it came symptoms that would reshape fashion for the next 3 centuries. As the disease progressed through its victims, it left behind a trail of horror that went far beyond physical pain. Festering sores erupted across faces, limbs began to wither and decay, and most devastatingly of all, hair fell out in chunks, leaving behind patchy, scarred scalps that immediately branded victims as diseased outcasts. In a world where appearance determined everything from marriage prospects to business opportunities, losing one's hair wasn't just a cosmetic problem, it was social. The European aristocracy had built their entire identity around elaborate grooming rituals, and a full head of lustrous hair was considered the ultimate symbol of health, virtue, and divine favor. When disease began stealing this most precious asset, the consequences weren't just personal. They were catastrophic. For entire bloodlines, families would go to extraordinary lengths to conceal any signs of illness, because even the suspicion of disease could destroy generations of carefully built reputation. Enter the most image-obsessed monarch in European history, King Louis XIV. Of France didn't just rule a kingdom, he crafted an entire mythology around his divine right to power. Every aspect of his appearance was carefully orchestrated to project immortal grandeur, from his golden palace at Versailles to the sun imagery that adorned every surface of his realm. So when the teenage king began experiencing hair loss, it presented a crisis that threatened the very foundation of his carefully constructed image. Baldness simply didn't fit with the eternal, godlike persona he was building for himself and his dynasty. Louis's solution was nothing short of revolutionary. He assembled an army of the finest craftsmen in France, eventually employing 48 master wig makers whose sole purpose was creating headpieces that would not only conceal his hair loss, but actually enhance his royal presence. These weren't simple hair pieces. They were architectural marvels, towering monuments of human hair that extended his silhouette and made him appear larger than life itself. Each wig was like a crown, only more versatile and infinitely more telling of status and power. The transformation was immediate and dramatic. When Louis appeared at court with his magnificent new look, the effect rippled through European high society like a one-shock wave. Within months, every nobleman, diplomat, and person of influence was scrambling to commission their own elaborate hairpieces. It wasn't just about following fashion, it was about political survival. To appear at court without a wig was tantamount to rejecting the king's authority. And in Louis's France, that was a dangerous position indeed. But beneath the surface of this glittering fashion revolution lay a much darker purpose. These elaborate creations served as perfect camouflage for the reality of disease that continued to ravage European society. A skillfully constructed wig could hide more than just baldness. It could conceal weeping sores, cover scarred tissue, and mask the telltale signs of illness that would otherwise spell social ruin. They became shields against judgment, transforming medical necessity into a symbol of sophistication and power. The practical challenges of wig maintenance created an entire underground industry dedicated to cleanliness and concealment. Since most wig wearers shaved their natural hair completely, it became easier to treat the artificial hairpiece for parasites than to delouse natural locks. Wig craftsmen developed sophisticated techniques for cleaning, treating, and refreshing these expensive investments, creating what amounted to specialized space treatments for hairpieces. The wigs were regularly boiled, powdered, and scented with expensive oils that not only maintained their appearance, but helped mask the various odors of an era before modern hygiene. The powder itself became an art form that went far beyond simple white starch. While most people today imagine powdered wigs as uniformly white, the reality was far more colorful and complex. Wealthy women experimented with violet, blue, gray, and even pastel pink powders, each shade carefully chosen to complement their complexion or reflect seasonal fashion trends. The ingredients varied wildly, from rice flour and cornstarch to more exotic substances like crushed pearls and even ground plaster of Paris. Most importantly, these powders were heavily scented with lavender, rose, and citrus oils, creating mobile clouds of expensive fragrance that helped combat the less pleasant aromas of daily life. By the 1770s, wig culture had reached heights of absurdity that seem almost impossible to believe today. The term big wig, which we still use to describe important people, comes directly from this era when the size of one's hairpiece literally indicated social status. The wealthy competed to create increasingly elaborate and physically impossible hairstyles that required engineering solutions just to remain upright. Some women's wigs became so massive, they needed internal scaffolding to maintain their shape, and the most extreme example featured miniature ships, gardens, and even working bird cages incorporated into the design. This escalation created an unexpected social crisis when the growing merchant class began adopting aristocratic hair fashion. The Marquis de Mirabeau famously expressed his horror upon encountering a beautifully dressed gentleman who turned out to be his blacksmith's son, wearing a wig that cost more than most people earned in a year. For the traditional aristocracy, seeing their exclusive symbols adopted by commoners represented nothing less than an identity crisis. Their response was predictable. They made their own wigs even more elaborate and expensive, creating an arms race of hair that pushed fashion to its absolute limits. But every empire, even an empire built on hair, must eventually fall. The French Revolution brought with it a complete reversal of values that spelled doom for wig culture almost overnight. Powdered wigs, which had once symbolized sophistication and power, suddenly became hated emblems of oppression and excess. Revolutionary fervor demanded simplicity, authenticity, and rejection of aristocratic pretensions. Within a single decade, 3 centuries of wig tradition collapsed as completely as the monarchy itself. Yet the story doesn't end with the guillotine. Even today, remnants of wig culture persist in unexpected places, serving as living links to this remarkable chapter of human history. British judges and barristers still don traditional horsehair wigs in court, maintaining a connection to centuries of legal tradition. Theater companies preserve elaborate period pieces that help modern audiences understand the visual language of past eras. Museums display these remarkable artifacts as windows into the complex psychology of societies obsessed with appearance and social positioning. The legacy of powdered wigs teaches us something profound about human nature itself. These elaborate creations reveal how fashion evolves not just through artistic expression, but through medical necessity, social pressure, and the eternal human desire to belong while standing out. They show us how innovation often springs from the most unexpected sources. How a teenage king's insecurity about hair loss could reshape an entire continent's aesthetic sensibility. Looking at our modern world, we might ask ourselves, what equivalent powdered wigs do we wear today? What elaborate constructions do we build around our own insecurities? What social pressures drive our fashion choices? And what are we really trying to hide or communicate through our appearance? The powdered wig era reminds us that fashion is never just about clothing or hairstyles. It's about power, belonging, medical realities, and the eternal human struggle between authenticity and acceptability. So the next time you encounter an image of someone wearing an elaborate powdered wig, remember that you're looking at more than just historical costume. You're seeing a complex story of human adaptation, creativity, and survival. You're witnessing how our ancestors transformed medical necessity into artistic expression, how they used fashion as both shield and sword in the battles of social hierarchy. That magnificent white creation isn't just hair and powder, it's a testament to the extraordinary lengths humans will go to maintain dignity, project power, and hide their most vulnerable truths in a world that shows little mercy for weakness.